YouTube and social anyway, so other people can then watch it.
Yes. Hey, T-Bone, can you double check I went live? Are we showing up?
I will go check right now.
T-Bone, can you double?
Yeah, we're live.
All right. Welcome everybody to Spill the Tea. It's been a few weeks since we've had a session. Our guest this week is Andrei Obradovic. I hope I said that correctly.
Obradovic, same thing.
Okay. And Spill the Tea is a program that my daughter Tanner and I came up with a while ago. Both of us have gone on the low carb lifestyle now for a few years. We did that for metabolic reasons. We were inspired at the time to try and reach out and help other people. So we've started an organization we call Ketonic Revolution. And we use the Makes Me Healthy protocol to help people reverse diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. And in our program, one of the main components is exercise and movement. And I know from a selfish point of view that I want to ask Andrei quite a few questions about that today, our guest. Before I do that, T, do you have anything you want to say in terms of the introduction?
No, other than the fact that we're really excited to have you on Spill the Tea. We've always kind of wanted to talk about topics that were considered more controversial or topics that we wanted to kind of dive further into. So that's why we call it Spill the Tea. But no, I'm excited for the questions and everything that's going to come out of this. So thank you for coming on and taking the time to be a part of the show.
That's all right. I'm really excited.
So I'm really fired up about this. I wanted to say before, and I know I almost forgot, was that I've done a lot of work through Nutrition Network, and you were actually one of my mentors. And I was trying to think which certification, but I'm convinced it was actually more than one. I think the initial battery that I did there, and then I'm pretty sure also in the advisor certification. So you were an inspiration at that time, and both Tanner and I have gone through, like I said, our own metabolic changes. I reversed prediabetes 2 years ago, and have been practicing the low carb lifestyle. I also am a CrossFit coach, and I practice. I'm working out pretty hard 4 to 5 days a week, and I'm afraid that I might be one of those guys that's a conventional idiot. So I have a lot of questions for you, because one of my main goals here, I'm being 62, is to find an an exercise program, a movement program for people my age that's not going to hurt them, that allows them to, achieve better overall health and fitness. And I think with that said, I want to turn this over to you, because I'm pretty certain you have a story here too. I've yet to meet anyone in this space who doesn't have a personal story and how they got here. So that's enough with me. What do you think?
Sorry, Andre, Tanner, should I be on mute with my camera off?
No, you can be however you want to be. Sorry, my mom and my brother just came in. My dogs ran off, so I had to find them. But you can stay on mute if you have questions. It might be better if you went on mute, and then when you have a question, go off of mute. But we'd love to see you and have your camera on. So my camera will be the rest of the time as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so my story was that essentially about 8 years ago, I was 80 kilos. I now range between 62 and 65 on a daily basis. I was 48, and I was an executive in a company working in an office, because in those days you could go to the office. You weren't. It wasn't really. We did work at home a lot, but we were a pretty advanced company. I worked for Cisco. And we worked long hours, so you had to work at home. Whereas these days it's like you do, because of the COVID stuff, right? So we're in the office all the time, and I was working with other people my age. And I left the army probably 14 years before that. So, 30, I'm not good with numbers, but I was in my late 30s, I think. Probably about 30, 38 when I left the army, because I've done 20 years. And I just sort of started to put on a bit of weight. I left the army at about 69 kilos. I don't know what that is in pounds. You guys can work that out. The numbers will sort of, make a bit of sense to you that way. And by the time I got to working in this company for about 12 to 14 years, I'd gotten up to about 80 kilos, and it sort of just snuck up on me. You're traveling for business, you're eating out, you have a corporate card, drinking, eating, entertaining clients, etc. You can hear me nice and clearly? Yeah, good.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, you're good.
Yeah, good. And it just snuck up on me. And one day I was just looking in the mirror in our bathroom, because we have big mirrors. And I said to myself, gee, you're a fat bastard. Now that we're allowed to say that to ourselves. That's not politically correct, because I'm talking about myself. But I wasn't really, because everyone else in the office was a bit what I call chunky. But I had a little bit of flab, and that is about 14 kilos, which is I think about 28. 14 kilos is about 20, maybe 30 pounds. Would that be about right? I think that's about right.
Yeah, that should be about right. Yeah.
But everyone else in the office did, except for the real skinny guys, and those real skinny guys that look like me now. I thought they were sick. I was like, gee, that guy looks a bit skinny. I wouldn't want to look like that. So you sort of, this normalization of what happens as you get older. I didn't, sort of understand what was happening. But I had this epiphany moment where I took my glasses off and I saw the reality of the situation. I saw the reality that just because everyone else was a bit chunky, I didn't have to be, because I was trying to run marathons, and I was always sore. I was running 70 kilometers a week. I was always sore at this time. My calves were killing me. So when I realized I'd put on this weight, I went and saw a exercise physiologist, and he says, oh, you're being lazy, you just need to exercise more. So that's when I started to try and run marathons and stuff, right? And I could drop 2 or 3 kilograms. Before a race, I'd get to maybe from 80 down to 72 or 74. And I was like, wow, this is so exciting, losing this weight. And then do the marathon, and within 3 days, you'd put it all back on again, because you're back into the pasta and rice and all those yummy carbohydrates that we're told in all those bullshit magazines that we, in fact, I got my book, Advanced Marathoning Techniques. Here it is, just hang on, I want to show you something. So all these books. This is a piece of shit book anyway, by the way. It's all bullshit. We can talk more about that. But I was following this conventional stupidity approach to running, and I bet you if you went and found all of these skinny guys here now in real life, they'd all probably almost have diabetes and be obese. Not because they've stopped exercising, because their insulin receptors are gone and they've got diabetes. Just like Robert De Castella, I'm going on a tangent here, but Robert De Castella, one of Australia's best marathoners in the world, he looked just like these guys when he was winning races, and now he's a great guy, but I would say he's almost obese, and he's got diabetes. And it's not because he stopped running. It's because he took advice from the Australian Institute of Sport, Louise Burke, who says you need to have carbohydrates, and this sort of book. But so that's what I was following, and I call that conventional stupidity, because to me that's like if you're doing the same thing over and over again and the results aren't coming or things don't change, well, that's just conventional stupidity. Yeah. So that's what I was doing. I was even seeing a dietitian that I was paying $200 an hour to keep me fat. So I was recording all my food. It was a low-fat diet. I was measuring my Garmin numbers, how many calories I was expending. And she said, as long as you're in a calorie deficient mode, you will lose weight. So that's this another conventional stupidity idea of calories in, calories out. It just wasn't, it was working to some extent, but I was still overweight, but I was always inflamed. I was always sore. I was going to the physiotherapist and getting my calves massaged every week 2 times so I could keep running. So that was the story of me being what I call a little fat muppet, and not following the right advice. And so the first epiphany moment was, I'm overweight, I need to do something about it. So I went and took the conventional approach, exercise more and eat low fat. And that didn't work. And I tried that for a couple of years and that just didn't work. And then my coach at that time, Brian Rabinowitz, a great guy, said, hey, you should go and listen to this guy called Stephen Finney, who's talking at the Epworth Hospital. And I went to his seminar, and that just totally, in one evening, that totally changed my whole approach and outlook on conventional stupidity. So I bought his books, him and Jeff Volek's books. I read them. This was just before Christmas. I read them. And by June, I dropped, I think probably 8 or 9 kilograms from just before Christmas. And that started the whole journey, essentially.
That's really, really awesome. So we have an interesting connection, because I just calculated this up. And at the time that I started a ketogenic diet, I was 76 kilos, and in the first year I lost 14. And the way I got started was not that different than you. I mean, it was only from the point of view that I'd been diagnosed with prediabetes, and I was following the doctor's orders, and I was seeing my blood sugar, my blood glucose steadily rising. Nothing was changing with that, and I was super frustrated. And I ran into a friend of mine at the gym who suggested that I watch this TED Talk by Dr. Sarah Hallberg, right? And she's part of that whole crew. And for me, that TED Talk was the epiphany that you had looking at Finney's and Volek's books, which I've also read now. And I went home that night. It was pretty much a no-brainer and started eating that way. And I saw amazing results. I mean, in 52 days, my blood sugar my blood glucose was normalized, and my A1C had also come into the normal range. There have been other things, because the whole diabetes platform is more than just blood glucose and A1C. So some of the other things that I had going on took longer for them to rectify, but they've, like, all my cardiovascular markers have moved in the right direction. I'm really pretty excited about that. And then there are other things like the exercise aspect of this that I'm still trying to sort out on a ketogenic diet, because of course out there in the world we still have. In fact, today on Facebook there was an ad by the American Diabetes Association. And it's getting a lot of traction. By the keto people are coming on, including me, going, well, yeah, we'll be ambassadors for you when you guys finally admit that you've got to reduce the carbohydrates in your life if you want to actually reverse diabetes. And until you guys do that, we don't want any part of this. But then out of the woodwork, you get these people coming in who still are in complete denial about this stuff. And in terms of exercise, just the other day, I listened to someone in Clubhouse, a fitness expert, supposedly going on about the fact that you can't do strength training and that you can't do HIIT exercises on the ketogenic diet. And, and I don't even know what to say to that, because I have been doing it, working out pretty hard now for the last 2 years. And I know that was only in the first 2 months of starting to get keto adapted that I actually felt a deficit working out. But after adaption, I have not had any problems like that, doing heavy lifting or doing HIIT. But But anyway, I'm already starting to digress. You know, I've been also reading. I read about the math methodology, right? I've been on your website a whole bunch, and then I also bought the headphones from those guys. I got a few words I'd say about these because they're not working it as well as I would like, but I've been applying the math, theory to my own working out, and I wanted to get your opinion. I'd like to hear you describe, what a week, 7 days in someone's life like mine looks like if you're paying attention, to the math methodologies.
Sure. So you want to start on that?
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm really, really curious how you look at this, how you train your people. Like from my point of view, I'm a rock climber, and so the biggest thing in my fitness is power endurance. The two of those aspects together, right? And I strength train a couple days a week, and then I still have the hits in there, but to be completely candid about it, I think that my recovery is not what it should be. And I'm wondering if it's because I'm being conventionally stupid and I'm perhaps like elevating the workload too high, especially CrossFit. I suppose when I told you that, you probably, I don't know how you feel about this, but I know that I do my own training now. I've left the gym and I'm a trainer, and I have since modified what I do because I know that when I tried to stay in their programming in a CrossFit gym, I was getting annihilated. I was not recovering at all, and since then I've gone rogue. I do it myself, my own programming, and I'm trying to find this sweet spot somewhere. But let me be quiet. I want to hear what your thinking is about this.
Yeah, well, on the CrossFit, that's typical of what I see and that's because, CrossFit gyms, whatever health program that gyms run, whether it's Les Mills or whatever, F45 or whatever you call it, they're there to make money. So they give people what they want. They don't tell people what they need or what they don't want to hear. They tell people what they want, and that is come to the gym at 5:30, be a hard ass, get with your group of buddies, get your heart rate up high, smash yourself, burn calories, lift heavy, be a hero, get all the adrenaline and endorphins pumping, and smash yourself. Because that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear you can go and jog on a treadmill or run outside at 180 minus your age heart rate, which might be for me, it's 125, and do that for an hour. People don't want to hear that because they're like, what do you mean? I can't run at that heart rate. How am I going to get fit? They'll never tell people that because people don't want to hear that. I mean, I do. That's how I work with people. So whether it's CrossFit or F45 or Les Mills or whatever, Zumba, whatever program at gyms, unless it's yoga and meditation, generally it's going to be smash yourself, get up early, be there with the group, have a protein shake afterwards, and eat low fat because, it's all about the calories in, calories out. And all I see is people with adrenal fatigue, sore backs, sore knees, and injuries and total exhaustion from CrossFit and other things like that. That's what I see. And that's my comment on that. However, there's nothing wrong with lifting heavy weights in a controlled manner as part of training and doing powerlifting and strength training if you have the appropriate experience and background and have the right sort of body to do that or have the right sort of coaching to do that. And I would encourage that. So what I talk about is, if people have never lifted weights in a gym, the first thing they have to do is body weight exercises. Yeah. With proper supervision to make sure, like things like squats, like the primal movements, squats, planks, chin-ups, and push-ups. That's just the 4 primal movements. They need to do that under supervision to make sure they're doing those right. Then they might transgress or move into using small dumbbells to do different types of exercises, move into the machines, like the Life Fitness, the Nautilus type machine environment first to get more strength there. And they may do that for 6 to 12 months. Once they get their confidence up and there's no injuries, then they go into free weights, as in racks and squats and things like that, all with proper supervision to make sure the exercises are being done correctly. And then we say, well, what is the purpose? Is it to build strength? Is it to build endurance? Is it to build explosive power? What is the purpose? And then the workouts would be written accordingly with the right method, the right prescription, whether we're doing heavy weights, low reps with long recoveries, which is what I do. I do a power-based, for my training, it's all power-based, heavy weights. So, I will rarely do more than 8 reps of any exercise. And they're always slow on the way down, hold at the bottom, and then drive on the way up to sort of get that power going in the glutes. So, that's sort of to take your comment about gym training and CrossFit, and I can go into the math training now if you like, and what the principles are there, etc.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay, so for those that are listening and don't know, the MAF method is what is called the maximum aerobic function, and it's developed by a guy called Phil Maffetone, and that has nothing to do with why it's called the MAF method. It's just a coincidence that Dr. Phil Maffetone's name lines up with the maximum aerobic function. And Phil is essentially an enigma in the world of endurance sport. He trained Mark Allen, which he was a 6 times Hawaii Ironman champion back in the 80s. And he's trained many, many New York and Boston marathoners. But Phil is a practitioner and a doctor. I'm one of his global certified foundation member coaches for his method. And his method is all around helping people improve their metabolic health, helping them improve their longevity, and helping them develop to their full athletic potential. And that's essentially what I've been doing for many years. And they're about to actually do a post of some of my data, because my data is quite compelling. They've taken 10 years worth of my running data, any run over 21 kilometers, and they've mapped it in a graph to show the average heart rate drop and the pace increase over time. So, my average heart rate is like 118, I think, at 445 kilometer pace. So as an example, I did a marathon last year in 3 hours 27 into a 50 kilometer an hour wind. So it was pretty challenging, and my average heart rate was 125. Now that's sort of pretty much unheard of.
Yeah.
And I did it fasted. I had 1 drink of water on the run. I think I had one fruit-based gel on the run, but no breakfast. And after it, I wasn't sore. I didn't even feel like I'd run. And that's all because of this Maffetone approach. So the Maffetone approach is all about, we've got to get and this is my approach that I take in all of my coaching with people, is we've got to get the body composition right first. And the way we do that is with a low carbohydrate approach. Like, I won't work with anyone in my triathlon and running coaching unless they're using low carbohydrate approach. So I do 2 things, or 3 things: sleep improvement, weight loss, and the endurance coaching. And it's all based around low carbohydrate. And that's the same as Phil's approach. It's fix the body composition and then get rid of processed junk foods, processed oils, get rid of all the sugar that we would normally eat, and eat whole vegetables, whole foods, foods that don't cause our gut distress or our body distress. And as our weight drops, we then go into the appropriate type of exercise. And we also manage our sleep. We have to look at our bloods and look at what's going on in our blood. Have we got enough vitamin D? Do we have enough zinc? Do we have enough iron? All those types of things. So it's a real holistic health approach. It's not just about running. Running is almost, or exercise is almost the last thing we look at. So the approach is that, we need to build our aerobic base, our fat burning machine, and that's all about running at this 180 minus your age. And you add or subtract beats up to 5 or 10 beats either on or off, depending on what illness you have, how your training's been going, and if you've been really performing well. And then we have a range of about 10 beats. So for me, because I've achieved quite a bit with my exercise, my MAF heart rate is 135. So I add 10 on, and my range is 125 to 135. That's the range I work in when I'm doing an aerobic exercise or endurance-based activity. And the approach is generally, if you're new to exercise, you do this MAF approach for 2 to 3 months. You do a MAF test, which is a 5-kilometer run. You can look this up on the web and see what it is. You do this 5-kilometer run where you're running at that heart rate. Some people, it might be a walk run or a jog run, and you track the time it takes, your heart rate, and you see progress over those months. And then at the appropriate time, depending on the person's experience, you would add in some higher intensity. But that does depend on the person's ability and their experience, because you don't want to injure someone.
Right.
But the whole approach is that people either exercise, they exercise either too easy or not hard enough. So people stay in this, what we call this gray zone. And that's this typically what's called zone 3, tempo, where it's a little bit uncomfortable, but you can do it for a longer time. And that really invokes this high cortisol response. So that's this gray zone that doesn't really develop your aerobic engine. All it does is wear you out. So people spend too much time there, not enough time in that comfortable. So like I can run for an hour at 5-minute kilometer pace and breathe through my nose, and my heart rate's probably 110 the whole time. Right, that's very comfortable. Like that's just building a huge aerobic engine. But then some days I'll do sprint work where I'm running at 330 pace on the athletics track, doing 400s. And so you do inject higher intensity, but people don't, the general public either train in that gray zone for most of it, and then they're too exhausted to do maximal effort sprinting work because they don't know really the technique. They can injure themselves, or they're too exhausted from running an hour or an hour and a half in gray zone instead of being comfortable and building your capacity. And then just because that's how we were evolved. As cavemen, we didn't go and run for an hour and a half to wear ourselves out to get fit, because most cavemen were lean and cut, and they'd sprint to go and kill an animal and then walk back to the cave. Like they wouldn't run back to the cave with the animal on them. They'd go and sprint for 20 seconds or 30 seconds because their life depended on it to get this food, or someone was chasing them and they'd sprint like hell. That's how we were evolved. But today we do everything totally the opposite. So that's my take on a very high level thing of MAF. But for you, Pete, I'd say you're probably, got too much cortisol and too much stress. Like, why don't you just go and lift some heavy weights, breathe through your nose, have long recoveries in between them, and keep your heart rate low? That's what I'd be doing.
I like that. I've got to write that down. T, what are you thinking?
Sorry, I didn't know where the mute button was for a second. No, I think that I think you should take his advice. Lift some heavy weights, breathe through your nose, reduce the stress, Dad. I like it. No, I really like that. I think that when I started CrossFit, I was doing it for a while, and actually the high intensity for me, like I really like the HIIT workouts, but I would start to have anxiety before going to a workout because I was too afraid of like the weights that I was going to have to put on. Like the encouragement from like, okay, this is where you were last week, Tanner, this is where you need to be this week. Like, and for me, I'm like, I'm just trying to go get a good workout in. I didn't feel like I needed to all of a sudden be lifting, putting on 10 pounds every single time I go to the gym. And I have a shoulder injury that I got snowboarding because I landed on my shoulder wrong. So it was like if I was doing certain workouts with a bar, and I had to keep putting on those weights and my shoulder tweaked, I was right back to where I was like when I first started. And so as much as I love CrossFit, I think the sport is amazing. Because I really do like it. But for me, I've actually taken a step back from CrossFit and started running again. And for me, that's been, and again, I was a runner in high school. So the carbo loads, before the low carb diet, we'll talk about that, is when I first started keto, I was like, okay, but before I work out or do anything really intense, I have to carbo load, right? Because I need to be able to withstand that the next day. And the fact of the matter is that none of that was true. I was able to I started keto like a couple months after Dad did. I think like 6 months after Dad did. And I was still going to the gym and I actually felt better. But I would say for me, I like in my personal, if we're talking about exercise and fitness, I was getting way too much. I started to get way too much anxiety for myself before going to a workout. So it was like I wasn't seeing those results that I wanted to see before keto. Or before low carb. And I was working out 5 days a week and I was going and I'd be sitting there like, oh man, I'm going to have to increase my weight today. And, oh, we're doing snatches. Like I'm starting to sweat thinking about snatches right now because I actually I really had a hard time with them, And so I just think it's so interesting. And it was like, as soon as I started a low carb lifestyle, I mean, I dropped, and I just checked this in kilos. I dropped 10 kilos in 2 months. And I didn't even know I had 10 kilos to drop. I thought, in pounds, it's like 135 and I dropped down to 120, whatever that, 10 kilos about. And so for me, I didn't even know I had that. I didn't do it just for the weight loss thing, but I did it and I saw those results that I'd been wanting, to kind of work towards in CrossFit.
You didn't have to do it doing CrossFit.
Right. I didn't have to, I didn't have to go to the gym and try to, get hot.
Probably go walking your dog.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what I say to my clients. In fact, I had a wonderful new client start with me last week. I met this man on Friday and I said to him that, the only exercise I want you to do is take a little dog for a walk if you have a dog, and he does have a dog. So, it's not about going to the gym and working out. It's about getting the food right, getting the sleep right, and at the right time adding in appropriate movement. That's what I call it, appropriate movement, because someone that's 30 kilos, as an example, just 30 or 20 kilos overweight, you don't want them running or working out in a gym, essentially. You want them being calmer and focusing on their food.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like for me, I mean, my way, I'm pretty, I've grown up really fit. I ran competitive cross country and track for I did 9 years throughout all of high school. I stopped when I started college. And then eventually when I went to college, I then started CrossFit, kind of different, complete switch over there. But no, I found the results that I wanted without having to feel like I needed to go lift weights and, freak out before having to do snatches, because I only like squats and deadlifts. I think that's really it. So anything like the push press really hurt my shoulder if I did it wrong, and especially if I had to start adding weights, I would tweak my shoulder almost instantly. So for me, that it really took out, a couple CrossFit workouts for me that was kind of essential to the CrossFit world, it felt like. So I'd go and I'd, dread those. But I really think that the stigma behind, the standard, carbo loading before working out and the lifting heavier and then all of a sudden, if we're raising our cortisol levels, the stress that you're putting on yourself, I was putting so much stress on myself to accomplish those things before I'd go, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to the gym. So I think that you have a really great strategy. I don't know, Dad, if you had any of that anxiety, but for me, that's that I know with me and my dad's flexibility is just about the same. Thank you for that.
The lack thereof.
Yeah, thereof. The mobility is just really not, I can't, and so we'd go to the gym, and one thing I really liked going to the gym with my dad was that our pace was the exact same. We weren't trying to go and be Superman there, or Popeye, eat the spinach before, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, we were kind of we'd be over there in the corner, we'd be ow, too far, So, I mean, that's how I kind of feel. Is I think that the low carb lifestyle, I really saw those results that I wanted, that I didn't even know that I wanted to see in 2 months. In 2 months, I've been doing CrossFit for a year and I hadn't seen any of that, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, great.
So Andre, this is what I'm curious about. So I think I'm starting to understand the idea that if you're working out at too high of an intensity, and if you're doing this day in and day out, then the cortisol levels are going to be running fairly high, right? Is that and this is going to inhibit your ability to recover?
Yeah, and it makes you, it doesn't help your insulin go down either, and it will turn your fat burning off. And the oxidative stress and inflammation in your body means you'll be sore the next day.
Right. So you're training some marathoners though, is that correct?
Yeah, I've got probably 12 to 14 athletes that I train, and they're marathoners, 10K runners, triathletes.
And so how is it for them when they've like done one of those runs the following day? I mean, if you're training them in the MAF method, right? Do they feel on the post race days like you do, like they're not having significant amount of pain, like they feel like they could go out and run if they wanted to the following afternoon?
Yeah, pretty much.
So this whole argument about knocking your glycogen stores down and having to eat carbohydrates like the day after a really tough workout like that is probably nonsensical then, right?
Yeah, in my opinion, it is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with eating carbohydrates if you're not trying to lose weight and if you're eating the right types of carbohydrates. Right. So for me, I eat sweet potato and pumpkin pretty much every day almost, and beetroot, because they're whole foods. And I'm not trying to lose weight, and I do exercise about 16 hours a week.
Just the aspect of, when I was running, we'd always have like big pasta parties before we'd go, and run 14 miles or something like that. So would that be considered,
No, that's not the approach. Yeah, okay. You don't need to do that. Firstly, because it's pasta. Pasta's a processed shit food. I've eaten pasta once in 8 years and it was terrible, and I'll never eat it again. No, what I'm saying is that, people demonize carbohydrates. So, if you're lean, like I got 7% body fat, if you're lean and you're metabolically flexible, I can eat a certain amount of carbohydrates, and that's fine for me because my body can handle it. But it's not processed food. It's not right. Bananas. Like I can't remember the last time I had a banana. It's like vegetables with fiber in them. And for me, I wouldn't go keto. I wouldn't go carnivore or keto. I just eat low carb because I feel that my body needs those vegetables, right? I'll eat gluten-free bread with seeds in it. It's higher in carbohydrates, but I have that with avocado and poached eggs on it because I'm not trying to lose weight. My weight is stable and I like eating. But for someone that's trying to lose weight, we obviously want to limit the carbohydrates. So, the only time I would add additional carbohydrates into my food is when I'm racing, but it's still not a carbo loading. It's more that I just make sure I eat 3 times a day, the couple of days before I go into a race, because I don't want to lose weight. So, my traditional eating pattern is I have time restricted eating window. I eat at about 11 o'clock and 6 o'clock. If I've got big training on or I feel like my weight's dropping too much, I will have something else as well. But in a week of a race where I'm doing a 5-hour half Ironman, I'll eat 3 meals, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because I want to go into the race with a bit of extra weight on, because in a race, I don't want to lose 2 or 3 kilos and be 61 kilos at the end of a race, because that's just not good. But it's not carbo loading. It's just eating a little bit more so that I've got a bit more resilience and a bit more, food on board. not that I'm going to burn that fuel in a race, because my heart rate is still so low in a race. I'm burning fat even when I'm running the half marathon at 4:30 or 4:40 pace. Like I just did a race in Geelong, and I was 8th in my age group in the run, and I ran a 1:41, which isn't that quick, but I had to have a toilet stop. But my heart rate was like 135 at the most, and I was just cruising at that pace. I wasn't burning carbs. I was burning fat pretty much the whole way.
So what is, I guess a question I have is, what is something that you would like eat like the day before a race? Like, would you proportion it as like, I know how, one method that we use a lot is, and how my dad explains it, is like the three, we are definitely probably lower carb.
Yeah.
I haven't eaten sweet potatoes in a while. But we kind of, if you look at it, we proportion it, our food kind of to a plate. You said you eat 3 times a day. Do you add like a certain portion of carbohydrates, protein, and high fat?
No, I've been doing this so long, I don't measure anything, right? So I would have an omelette for the first meal with eggs and vegetables in it, 2 or 3 eggs. I would have steak, Scotch fillet steak, about 100 grams for lunch, with cauliflower, broccoli, a little bit of sweet potato. I'm talking like a small handful. And then at night I'd have fish, and it's the same thing each time. I have steak for lunch, fish for dinner, and the same boring vegetables. It's just a standard thing that I do. I don't weigh anything. I don't measure anything. I don't count anything, because just intuitively I know what my body needs, because I've been doing this for 7 years.
That's what T and I do. Actually, even in our program, I don't advocate for using the macronutrient approaches and weighing food out. We just say, okay, look, here's a plate, cut it into 3 sections. You're going to have some type of protein that you like in one of them, and then, fist-size amounts of good, high-quality, low-carb vegetables in the other quadrants, and stop eating.
What I say to my weight loss clients is, they'll use Chronometer to track food for a while, just so they can see what's going on, and I can see what's going on. But eventually, like as an example, if they're going out for dinner and you obviously don't want to pull your phone out and track your food while you're at a restaurant with other people, maybe. I just say you have, 2/3 of your plate should be green and 1/3 should be red, meaning 1/3 of your plate is protein, and when I say red, meaning whether it's chicken or steak or whatever, red as in meat, and then 2/3 of the plate should be green vegetables, apart from cauliflower, which isn't green, but you can still eat cauliflower.
Right.
And I say, don't eat white shit, because most white food is shit apart from cauliflower. Like milk is shit, bread is shit, rice, pasta,
right,
tacos, pita breads, it's all white. So any white food is shit. And I'm not being racist, of course, but I'm sure someone will close me down for saying that. They'll say you're not allowed to say that. But like, you want to eat green foods and red meat and a little bit of red vegetables, meaning sometimes some beetroot or red capsicum, or sometimes some carrots, all depending on your level of insulin resistance and how what level of carbs you can tolerate.
Do you ever push the protein up because of your activity level? I mean, I do this intuitively. I don't the clients are always asking us, okay, how much protein should I be eating, right? And what I normally tell them is that, well, it should be the size of a deck of cards up to a man's fat wallet, right? But at this juncture in my own journey, I eat the protein that I crave at the time. Like quite often, I'll have 3 eggs for breakfast with like 4 pretty thick slices of bacon, right? And then that's all I'm eating for the rest of the day and then I have an eating window like yours. So my last meal of the day, I'm done by 6. But I'm weight stable. My weight's not going up and down. I think I feel good. I think I have, the only place where I think I've been remiss is in my education, as far as like the best workout schedules. part of that, I think, is because of my background in the mountains. I was a really heavy duty climber from the time I was a child to I finished. I was a mountain guide into my mid 40s, and so there was a mindset in that you would get on these big routes, and you would just be hammering to get up and down and do these things for like, sometimes 24 hours or more. And so sometimes I think I have this thing about working out that it should be like that. And I know that that's not.
You probably do. I was a climber as well. So, yeah, I was in the army. I did a lot of climbing, mountaineering and stuff like that. So, yeah, maybe just tone it down a bit.
Right. But
right.
I'm teaching guys my age too, so it's like, all right, yeah, okay, I got to tone it down, but I need to tone it down too for them.
Yeah.
Well, Clinton, do you have any questions or anything that you want to add?
Thanks, Tan. I do have a question. First of all, thanks for letting me in, but I feel like a bit of an imposter. I have this image in my head that there's about 120 people out there just listening to this interview, and I'll somehow end up on the camera. Am I right or wrong?
Well, I would love it if there's 120 people out there, but we're a young channel and whatnot, and it's a great day if there is.
Okay. No, I just imagined in my head there were this massive amount of people that were listening in, and I'd somehow end up on the camera by mistake. Clearly, the antithesis of the opposite of what you guys look like. So I've just started working with Andre after a type 2 diagnosis on the 1st of April of this year, and so it's the beginning of the journey for me with Andre. I suspect that man and a dog that he was talking about might have been me, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it was. But my question is, Andre, my question for you is, with people like myself who are looking to, sort of reverse some real damage that they've done to themselves health-wise, and in my case, really want to reverse or put into remission the type 2 diabetes. What's your experience of what it takes for people to be successful? What is it, a mindset thing? Is it if there were 3 things that you've observed with people like myself being successful, what is it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Clinton. First thing I think is saying, where do we want to be in the future with our health? So having some long-term vision of where do we want to be, how do we want to feel, what do we want to look like as a person? Yeah. Then it would be having the right information to know what to do, and not going from one to another, or keto, low carb, low fat, low follow. Not a lot of people that don't pay for coaching go and look at all these different things on YouTube and Instagram, and they follow all different things, and Facebook. Like, I don't have Facebook because to me it's a waste of life, right? So that's the second. So having the right information, and the third one would be the execution, and making sure that if we've got a partner, our partner and the person being coached work together to make sure they know who's cooking, what's on the meal plan, that we've got the right food in the fridge, and that we stick to the plan. So I call that planning and execution. So knowing where we want to be, having the right knowledge, and then the ability to plan and execute are probably the top 3, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Because anyone can know what to eat. But if you don't have the food in the fridge and you don't have the time to cook it before you get starving, if you're hungry, then the whole thing can just go to shit.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's a good answer.
And the other thing I'd say is deleting home delivery food apps off your phone.
Well, I can't because then I have to log it on Chronometer, and you're going to smash me. So
I'm not going to smash you at all.
no, you are.
Did that
that's,
answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's good. Pete and Tanner, do you have anything to add? You know, what you've observed with the people that you've worked with. What makes a successful client, and what makes a, oh man, you know, are you ever going to do anything?
I think that Andre was well spoken in this. I mean, I think, and I mostly work with type 2 diabetics.
Okay.
Getting rid of what he said about the food in the house. You want to make sure that you don't have go-to foods that are in there that are high in carbohydrate, and the willingness. I think that maybe one of the challenges my clients have is looking at this change in how they eat like it's a burden. You know, to try and position yourself a little bit differently. It's like it's an exciting place to be, to learn how to cook whole food and to look at it that way, and to make that an adventure that you're now are going to have, that you will have each day, you know, and having a plan, I think, is super important. So like, I don't know what you do in your life, but if you're, you know, somebody who goes to work, it's a very, very high stress environment. You're not having the opportunity to like go home and make lunch, something like that. Then planning's required, and you want to make sure to go into the workspace with the foods that you can eat for the day. So like, I have one of my type 2s, I have him take a cooler with him because he's a business guy, and while we're working on the mindset to reduce the stress and to try and prioritize his health more rather than prioritizing the number of meetings he has in one day, and all of that aside, I have him take a cooler to work with what he needs for the day, you know. And the way we work with our clients is in a cycle. What they make it for dinner, the whole foods, they over make the food so that the next day they've got their leftovers. All they got to do is throw it in the cooler and thunder out the door, and they've got high quality food. So I guess that's the only thing I would add to what Andre said, because he's got you covered, I think.
Yeah, that's the exact approach Clint and I talked about on Friday, because he was the guy I was talking about. I just wasn't going to say his name. You make your evening meal, and you have that when you're only eating twice a day. That's your lunch, or not lunch, but that's your first meal the next day, and that's the approach I use with pretty much everyone.
And just to add to, I guess, one approach that I've been really working on, mindfulness for the past year, ever since COVID really took. And one thing that I've noticed with our clients is when they start off the conversation, it's always like there's a lot of really like self-judgment. Like, if you're always like, I like to say, like, you're your own worst enemy, in the sense of, for me, for example, I'm always the hardest person on myself. Like, I'm always the hardest person on myself. And the one thing I really strive for is to be kind to yourself, because, you know, you're on this journey, you're on this path. And I think it's so important to look and be like, you know what? It's okay that you're feeling this way. It's okay. Like, this is what I do all the time, because I'm really hard on myself. So I look and I'm like, no, it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay I'm on this path, you know, and I would actually recommend, one thing that's really worked for me, and I recommend to other individuals to do, is to, you know, if you're ever having like a moment of, man, this is really hard, I always write it out in a diary or on a piece of paper or something, you know, to really, okay, like, why are you feeling this way? And that, I think, has really helped in the mindfulness aspect, is to just be kind to yourself. And for anyone else, you know, that's watching this, or it's, you know, on that journey, the first step is you're here, you know, the next step is moving forward, and then always just be kind to yourself. It's my biggest thing.
Thanks, guys. There's some good wisdom there. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's a good point, Tanner. Thanks.
Yes, mindfulness advocate over here.
If you lower your carbs, Clinton, and you go with this guy, Andre, and hang tough with it, and you're compliant in the lifestyle, you're going to reverse your diabetes. You know, the timing, it's hard to say because I don't know how in deep you are, right? But I mean, you are going to do it. It's just a journey and a process, and and be really, I would encourage you to just be really excited about it because this is going to go well. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I like all the points of the one thing that really resonates with me, Pete, is your point about, choose a mindset and look at this as an adventure, as a journey that is a positive one, not a burden. So it's not about all the stuff you giving up. It's all the stuff I'm going to gain. And with that mindset then filters what you're experiencing and filters the information you're getting in a very different way to, oh shit, I got to make this change now because I've allowed myself to get out of shape and I've damaged my pancreas, and that's all Tanner, to your point, that's all the beating myself up. And I've noticed Andre's pulled me up a couple of times to say to me, hey Clint, no, you're not a bad person. No, you're not. So he's gently nudging me in that mindset way. It's no, I mean we committed to it's 12-week, yeah, Andre?
Yeah.
A 12-week journey. Look, there's no good or bad type 2 diabetes. It's a shit disease. It's bad. I scored on the HbA1c a 6.5, so I'm right at the beginning. That doesn't make it any better or worse. It's still diabetic. But I didn't come in at an 11.5 or so. We'll see.
Yeah, I think you're in pretty reasonable shape. But I want to come back to this other thing that you spoke about, and that is, making the transition. And there's a lot of Andre can probably speak to this too. There's a lot of, I think, pushback in our cultures, respective cultures, about, they want to say that the low carb lifestyle and all this is so restrictive, but the truth of the matter is it's not restrictive. It's just different. And when you first start it, because you've lived your whole life in this standard American diet thing, right? Now all of a sudden it's like, well, what am I going to eat? But the reason why, and I asked that question too when I started, but the reason why you're asking that question, or I was asking it, is because, well, you never lived this way before. And the longer that you're in it, the more recipes you learn, the more things you learn you can eat that don't have much effect on your blood glucose level, those kinds of issues. So every day that you get up and you're doing this lifestyle is a day that you have more experience with it. And I love it. And even though that I was asking Andre about working out, and I'm acknowledging that I'm working out too hard, still, if I think about where I am today compared to where I was 2 years ago, being 30 pounds overweight, my A1C was 5.9, not that far off where yours is.
Yeah.
And I was like one of those guys in Andre's office, and get up off the couch. I couldn't have done a quarter of the things that I'm doing now. So, and I still have some things to tweak. I need to sort out this workout things. Definitely I have to tweak it, and I know I'm going on, but I want to just tell you quickly, I was down in the Grand Canyon a couple of weeks ago, and I used to be a mountain guide, and we had an individual on the trip with us who she broke down, and we were in this very remote place, a place we could not stop. We needed to get to the campsite. And I did what I used to do when I was 30 years old. I took her pack and threw it up on top of my pack. So I was carrying like an 80-pound load, maybe a little bit more. And then I took that pack and we went to the campsite down one of the roughest trails that I've had to negotiate for a long time. And that thing, it cashed me for the couple of days after the fact, right? But my point is that 2 years ago, I couldn't have done that. There's no way I could have done that. So, I mean, you're on a fantastic journey. I would try to look at the whole food thing like an experiment. All right, how can I make this stuff better? Because I think the low carb lifestyle it's rich, and we get to eat all the things that we're for years, decades we were told we can't eat. And meanwhile, you're going to see your sugar platform. I keep using sugar because that's like the layperson's way to look at this, but you're going to see your blood glucose is going to normalize. I mean, it's going to be a fantastic journey. And I'll bet a year from now, we should do this again, all the four of us, and see where you're at then, man. And I'll bet you're going to be the hale guy in the office, right? You're going to be like chiseled out, and things are going to be going great. That's.
Well, I hope so, Pete. I just need to be healthy, man.
Yeah.
It's like anything. I feel like I just started a financial analyst position within my company, and it reminds me a lot of taking that journey with keto. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing, really. You know what I mean? With low carb, I thought I was gonna have to eat the same stuff every single day, and that it was gonna be kind of boring, like chicken and rice diet. The people who eat chicken and rice for every single day. And eventually you kind of just gradually learn it, like a new like a promotion or something like that. You can learn to kind of tweak it, and you work with what works for you, and it's really good. I don't miss eating pasta or bread or anything actually at all. So it really, you can tweak it to what works for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
This message is from a colleague of mine who we team up on Clubhouse a little bit, and he's just telling you what his A1C was when he started low carb and what the outcome has been. So I think that's just fantastic. Well, listen, we've been on now about an hour, and I want to be really very respectful of everyone's time here. Is there anything else you want to add, Andre?
The only thing I'd say is, take your glasses off and look at the reality of the situation. And it might help people get a better picture of really where they're at with their health. And don't be scared, because, there's a lot of help out there. Invest in your health. It's going to cost money, but, being diabetic costs a lot of money as well. So don't be scared to invest in your health. Think about how much wine you've drunk over the years, or think about how much junk food you've paid for, and actually find experts that can help you with your health. Invest in money, in time and effort, and you'll get where you need to go, and you'll live longer and be healthier.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Got to put yourself first.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Well, do you have anything else, Clinton?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay. T?
Well, no, first, Clinton, congratulations. This is the first step of the process. And like I always say, just be kind to yourself. It's a journey. It really is. And you're going to, like my dad said, I mean, he reversed his prediabetes in 52 days, and that was kind of unheard of, before. And there's all this. So congratulations. You're on a great path, and you're working with a great coach.
Thank you, Tony. Very kind.
All right. Well, let me just say before I end the broadcast that Andre, we'll have an MP4 from this. We'll just have to figure out how to transfer it, like WeTransfer or Dropbox, something like that. And T and I will also put the edited version on our website, so you could have the link to that if you want. Either way, but anyway, we're communicating through LinkedIn, so just let me know what you would like.
Dropbox is fine. Whatever you want to share.
Okay. Awesome, man.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye. Thanks a
Goodbye.
lot.